New Chapel Hill, Texas, a quiet, serene town where life seemed peaceful and uneventful. Nestled among the rolling hills and open fields, the Laney household stood as a testament to family values and deep religious faith. The Laney family, consisting of Deanna, her husband Keith, and their 3 young children, were well known in the community for their devout involvement in the First Assembly of God Church. Deanna was a dedicated homemaker who homeschooled her children, Joshua, Luke, and Aaron, ensuring they were brought up in a close-knit, faith-oriented environment. On the outside, the Laneys appeared to embody the ideal of a loving, devout family. Their home, situated on a spacious plot of land, was often filled with the sounds of children's laughter and hymns sung by Deanna, who was an active member of the church choir. Keith, a hardworking and supportive husband, was deeply committed to his family, often seen engaging in community activities alongside his wife and children. However, beneath this peaceful exterior, a storm was brewing. Deanna, despite her outward appearance of calm and devotion, was struggling with severe mental health issues. Over time, her religious fervor intensified, leading to disturbing delusions and hallucinations. These were not apparent to those around her, as she kept her inner turmoil well hidden, masking her suffering with a facade of normalcy. The illusion of the Laney family's tranquility was shattered on the night of May 9, 2003. In the early hours of May 10, 2003, Deanna made a chilling call to 911. Her voice was calm and composed as she delivered a message that would haunt everyone who heard it. "I've killed my boys," she stated, without a hint of emotion. The operator, stunned by the cold clarity of her confession, continued to engage her in conversation while dispatching emergency services to the scene. The arrival of the police at the Laney household revealed a gruesome and heartbreaking reality. The officers, guided by Deanna's directions, discovered the bodies of 8-year-old Joshua and 6-year-old Luke in the backyard, near a swing set. Both boys had been brutally killed, their heads crushed by large rocks. Inside the house, they found 14-month-old Aaron in his crib, barely alive and covered in blood, with a pillow over his face. Deanna herself was found wandering barefoot in a nearby grove, still in her blood-stained pajamas, calmly speaking to the 911 operator. This horrific scene marked the beginning of a tragic and complex case that would uncover the depths of Deanna's mental illness and the unimaginable actions she believed were commanded by a divine force. Deanna Laney was a devoted wife and mother, married to Keith Laney. Together, they had 3 children: Joshua, born on January 15, 1995, Luke, born on August 23, 1996, and Aaron, born on March 2, 2002. The Laney family lived in New Chapel Hill, Texas, a small community where everyone knew each other. They were deeply involved in the First Assembly of God Church, where Deanna's brother-in-law was the pastor. Deanna sang in the church choir and was known for her devout faith. The family's life revolved around their religious beliefs, and this devotion extended to their children's upbringing. Deanna homeschooled Joshua and Luke, ensuring they were educated within the framework of their religious values. The boys were often seen playing around their spacious yard, a testament to the close-knit, family-oriented life Deanna and Keith had built. Their home was a place where faith and family were intertwined, creating an environment of love and dedication. However, behind this facade of tranquility, Deanna was grappling with severe mental health issues. While she appeared to be a loving and dedicated mother, she was experiencing profound psychological distress. Her increasing religious fervor began to manifest in disturbing ways, but these signs were not immediately apparent to those around her. Deanna's devoutness deepened to the point where she began experiencing hallucinations and delusions. In the months leading up to the tragic events, Deanna's behavior became increasingly erratic. She started having vivid religious visions and believed she was receiving direct messages from God. These messages often included bizarre and disturbing imagery. One notable hallucination involved her seeing her youngest son, Aaron, playing with a spear and holding a rock, which she interpreted as divine signs. Deanna also began to isolate herself from others, spending long hours reading the Bible and fasting. Her sister Pam noticed these changes and mentioned them to her husband, but they did not realize the severity of the situation. Despite these signs, Deanna managed to maintain an outward appearance of normalcy. Her husband Keith, who was deeply committed to his family, did not notice any alarming changes in her behavior. To him, Deanna was the same loving wife and mother she had always been. The community also remained unaware of her struggles, as Deanna continued to participate in church activities and fulfill her duties as a homemaker and educator. The intensity of Deanna's religious delusions grew over time. She began to believe that she was chosen by God for a special mission. This belief became a central part of her reality, and she felt compelled to act on it. Her delusions became so powerful that they overshadowed her love for her children and her grasp on reality. On May 9, 2003, Deanna's mental state reached a critical point. The hallucinations and delusions that had been plaguing her culminated in a tragic and violent act. She believed that God had commanded her to kill her children as a test of faith. This delusion was so compelling that it drove her to commit an unimaginable crime. Deanna's journey from a devoted mother to a woman overwhelmed by psychotic delusions is a stark reminder of the impact of untreated mental illness. Her story is a tragic example of how deeply mental health issues can affect an individual and those around them. On the night of May 9, 2003, a calm stillness settled over the Laney household. The children, Joshua, Luke, and Aaron, were asleep in their beds, unaware of the horrors about to unfold. Deanna Laney, driven by intense delusions, believed she had received a divine command to kill her sons. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, she quietly prepared to carry out this tragic mission. Shortly after midnight, in the early hours of May 10, 2003, Deanna took a large rock she had previously hidden. She walked into the bedroom of her youngest son, 14-month-old Aaron. Without hesitation, she struck him on the head multiple times with the rock. The brutal attack left Aaron severely injured, but he was still alive. To muffle his cries, Deanna placed a pillow over his face. Hearing the noise, Keith Laney, who had been asleep in another room, came to check on Aaron. Deanna reassured him that everything was fine, and he returned to bed, unaware of the horror unfolding. Deanna then moved on to her older sons. She woke up 8-year-old Joshua and 6-year-old Luke, leading them outside to the backyard. It was there, under the night sky, that she instructed Joshua to lie down on the ground. Using the same rock, she bludgeoned him repeatedly until his skull was crushed and he lay lifeless. She then dragged his body behind the swing set. Luke, witnessing his brother's fate, struggled and resisted, but Deanna overpowered him. She struck Luke with the rock multiple times until he too succumbed to his injuries. With her horrific task completed, Deanna returned to the house and made a chilling phone call to 911. Her voice was eerily calm and composed as she confessed to the murders. "I've killed my boys," she stated. The 911 operator, initially stunned by the confession, kept Deanna on the line while dispatching emergency services to the Laney residence. When police arrived at the Laney home, they were greeted by a scene of unimaginable horror. They found Keith Laney in his nightclothes, looking bewildered and confused. He had no idea what had happened. The officers followed Deanna's directions to the backyard, where they discovered the bodies of Joshua and Luke. Both boys were in their underwear, their heads brutally crushed by the large rock Deanna had used. The swing set, once a place of joy and play, now stood as a silent witness to the violence that had occurred. Inside the house, the officers found Aaron in his crib, barely alive and covered in blood. The pillow Deanna had placed over his face was soaked with blood. Despite his severe injuries, Aaron was still breathing. The officers immediately called for medical assistance, and Aaron was rushed to the hospital, fighting for his life. Meanwhile, Deanna was found wandering barefoot in a small grove near the house. She was still wearing her blood-stained pajamas and continued talking to the 911 operator. Her demeanor was calm, almost detached, as she described what she had done. The police arrested her on the spot, noting her bizarre and unsettling behavior. The 911 call played a crucial role in the investigation. Deanna's calm and matter-of-fact confession shocked everyone who heard it. The operator's attempts to keep Deanna talking provided valuable time for emergency services to arrive at the scene. The recording of the call later became a key piece of evidence in understanding Deanna's state of mind during the crime. As the details of that night emerged, the community of New Chapel Hill was left in shock and disbelief. The brutal murders of Joshua and Luke and the severe injury of Aaron shattered the peaceful facade of the Laney family. The events of May 9, 2003, revealed the tragic consequences of untreated mental illness and religious delusions, marking the beginning of a complex and heartbreaking legal and psychological battle. When the police arrived at the Laney household on May 10, 2003, they were met with a scene of unimaginable horror. The first officers on the scene found Keith Laney in his nightclothes, looking bewildered and confused. He had been awakened by the commotion, but had no idea of the gruesome events that had taken place. The officers followed Deanna's directions to the backyard, where they made a shocking discovery. Lying near the swing set were the bodies of 8-year-old Joshua and 6-year-old Luke. Both boys were in their underwear, their heads brutally crushed by the large rock Deanna had used. The sight of the two lifeless children, with their once joyful play area now turned into a horrific crime scene, was a sight that the officers would never forget. Inside the house, the officers found 14-month-old Aaron in his crib. He was barely alive, covered in blood, and had a pillow over his face. Despite his severe injuries, he was still breathing. The officers quickly called for medical assistance, and Aaron was rushed to the hospital, fighting for his life. Outside, Deanna was found wandering in a nearby grove, barefoot and still in her blood-stained pajamas. She was calm and composed, continuing her conversation with the 911 operator. The police approached her carefully, aware of the potential volatility of the situation. When they asked her what had happened, Deanna responded with chilling clarity. She told them that God had ordered her to kill her children, believing that she was fulfilling a divine command. Deanna was arrested on the spot. Her initial statements to the police were consistent with what she had told the 911 operator. She calmly explained that she believed she was carrying out God's will and that her actions were a test of faith. The officers noted her bizarre behavior, which included sudden shifts from calmness to hysteria, and her unwavering belief that she had done the right thing. As the investigation unfolded, the police pieced together the events of that tragic night. They learned that Deanna had been experiencing severe religious delusions and hallucinations in the months leading up to the murders. Her claims that she had received direct messages from God and her interpretation of everyday objects as divine signs painted a picture of a woman in the grip of a profound mental health crisis. The evidence collected at the crime scene, combined with Deanna's own statements, left no doubt about her involvement in the deaths of Joshua and Luke and the severe injury of Aaron. The brutality of the murders, the calmness with which Deanna confessed, and her insistence that she was following divine orders shocked the investigators and the community. Deanna's arrest marked the beginning of a complex legal process that would delve into her mental state and the motivations behind her actions. The community of New Chapel Hill, still reeling from the horror of the crime, was left to grapple with the tragic reality that had unfolded in their midst. The investigation and subsequent trial would reveal the depths of Deanna's delusions and the devastating impact of untreated mental illness on a loving family. Deanna Laney's trial began on March 29, 2004, in Tyler, Texas. The courtroom was filled with members of the community, media, and legal professionals, all eager to see how this tragic case would unfold. The prosecution and defense presented their arguments, each painting a different picture of Deanna's actions and mental state. The prosecution argued that Deanna was aware of her actions and that the murders were premeditated. They emphasized the brutality of the killings and pointed out that Deanna had taken steps to hide what she was doing from her husband, Keith. The prosecution insisted that even if Deanna believed she was following divine orders, she knew that what she was doing was wrong by human standards. They highlighted the fact that she had called 911 herself, indicating that she understood the gravity of her actions. The defense, however, painted a different picture. They argued that Deanna was in the grip of severe mental illness and that her actions were driven by psychotic delusions. They brought in several mental health experts to testify about Deanna's state of mind at the time of the killings. The defense claimed that Deanna's religious fervor had escalated into a full-blown psychotic episode, rendering her incapable of distinguishing right from wrong. One of the key witnesses for the defense was Dr. Park Dietz, a renowned forensic psychiatrist. Dr. Dietz had evaluated Deanna and concluded that she was suffering from severe psychotic delusions. He testified that Deanna believed she was receiving direct messages from God, commanding her to kill her children as a test of faith. Dr. Dietz explained that Deanna's delusions were so powerful that they overrode her ability to understand the reality of her actions. Another important witness was Dr. Philip Resnick, another forensic psychiatrist. Dr. Resnick supported Dr. Dietz's conclusions, stating that Deanna's delusions were consistent with a diagnosis of psychosis. He detailed how Deanna had interpreted everyday events and objects as divine signs, such as seeing her son with a spear and a rock. Dr. Resnick emphasized that Deanna's behavior was not that of a sane person, but rather someone deeply lost in a psychotic episode. The court also heard from Dr. Edward Grippen, who had conducted a thorough evaluation of Deanna. He testified that Deanna had been experiencing hallucinations and delusions for months leading up to the murders. Dr. Grippen described how Deanna believed she was chosen by God for a special mission and how this belief had driven her to commit the murders. He stated that in his professional opinion, Deanna was legally insane at the time of the killings. Throughout the trial, the jury was presented with graphic evidence, including photos of the crime scene and the injuries sustained by Joshua, Luke, and Aaron. These images, along with the chilling 911 call, painted a stark picture of the brutality of the crime. However, the testimonies of the mental health experts provided crucial context for understanding Deanna's actions. On April 4, 2004, after several days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. They found Deanna Laney not guilty by reason of insanity. The judge ordered that Deanna be committed to a maximum security psychiatric facility for treatment. This decision was based on the overwhelming evidence presented by the defense's mental health experts, who had all concluded that Deanna was legally insane at the time of the murders. The verdict was met with mixed reactions. Some members of the community were relieved that Deanna would receive the mental health treatment she clearly needed. Others were outraged, believing that justice had not been served. Keith Laney, who had supported his wife throughout the trial, was devastated by the loss of his sons, but expressed hope that Deanna would eventually recover from her illness. The trial of Deanna Laney highlighted the complexities of mental illness and its impact on criminal behavior. It underscored the importance of mental health evaluations in understanding the motivations behind such tragic actions. The testimonies of Dr. Dietz, Dr. Resnick, and Dr. Grippen provided a detailed picture of Deanna's psychotic state, offering a glimpse into the mind of a mother driven to commit an unthinkable act by her delusions. The legal proceedings and psychiatric evaluations revealed the profound depth of Deanna's illness, ultimately leading to a verdict that reflected her mental state rather than the heinous nature of the crime. Following the trial, Deanna Laney was committed to Kerrville State Hospital, a maximum security psychiatric facility. Her time there was marked by intense psychiatric treatment aimed at stabilizing her mental health. Deanna was prescribed antipsychotic medication, and her progress was closely monitored by a team of mental health professionals. Over the years, she participated in various therapy sessions designed to address her delusions and help her understand the severity of her actions. Each year, Deanna's case was reviewed to determine if she posed any risk to herself or others. These evaluations were crucial in deciding whether she should remain in the facility or be considered for release. Her behavior improved significantly under medication, and she began to show signs of remorse and understanding of her delusional state. Despite this progress, many remained skeptical about her potential release. On May 15, 2012, after nearly 9 years in the psychiatric facility, Deanna Laney was deemed fit for release. Her release came with stringent conditions to ensure both her safety and that of the community. She was required to continue taking her prescribed medication without fail. Regular visits from a designated social worker were mandated to monitor her compliance and overall well-being. Deanna was also prohibited from having any unsupervised contact with minors, a precaution taken to prevent any possible recurrence of her past behavior. Deanna's life post-release has been kept largely private. Very few people know her exact whereabouts, and her living situation is managed discreetly. This measure is intended to protect her privacy and allow her to live as normal a life as possible under the circumstances. Her ex-husband, Keith Laney, was notified of her release, a decision that stirred mixed feelings in the community and among those close to the family. The impact of the tragic events on Aaron, the surviving son, has been profound. Aaron, who was only 14 months old at the time of the attack, was left severely disabled. He suffered significant brain damage, resulting in the loss of his sight and impairments in his ability to care for himself. Now a teenager, Aaron requires constant care and support. Keith Laney has been dedicated to providing for Aaron's needs, ensuring he receives the best possible care and support despite the circumstances. Keith Laney's life also took a significant turn after the tragedy. In 2008, he divorced Deanna and eventually remarried. He continues to live in New Chapel Hill, where he has rebuilt his life while caring for Aaron. The community, although scarred by the events, has largely moved forward, supporting Keith and Aaron in their ongoing journey. Deanna Laney's release remains a controversial topic. Some believe that her continued freedom is a testament to the effectiveness of psychiatric treatment and rehabilitation. Others, however, feel that the nature of her crimes should have warranted a lifetime of confinement. Regardless of these differing views, Deanna's case highlights the complexities of dealing with severe mental illness in the context of the criminal justice system. Today, Deanna lives under the watchful eye of mental health professionals, adhering to the conditions of her release. Her story serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of mental health awareness and the need for effective treatment and monitoring. The lasting impact on her family, especially on Aaron, underscores the tragic consequences of untreated mental illness and the challenges faced by those left in its wake. The case of Deanna Laney is a tragic reminder of the devastating impact of untreated mental illness. It highlights the complex intersection between mental health and the criminal justice system. Deanna's belief that she was acting under divine orders led her to commit an unthinkable act, driven by severe psychotic delusions. The court's decision to find her not guilty by reason of insanity reflects an understanding of her profound mental illness, but also underscores the challenges in dealing with such cases. The Laney family and the New Chapel Hill community have been forever changed by the events of May 10, 2003. The brutal loss of Joshua and Luke, the severe disability of Aaron, and the psychological toll on Keith are enduring reminders of the tragedy. Despite the passage of time, the emotional scars remain, affecting everyone connected to the case. Deanna Laney's story bears similarities to that of Andrea Yates, another Texas mother who, under the influence of severe mental illness, killed her children. Both cases involve mothers deeply lost in their delusions, resulting in horrific outcomes. These cases highlight the critical need for better mental health awareness, early intervention, and comprehensive treatment options to prevent such tragedies. As we reflect on this heartbreaking story, it is clear that addressing mental health issues is not just about treatment, but also about understanding and compassion. The Laney case urges us to recognize the signs of mental illness and the importance of supporting those who struggle with it. The enduring impact on the Laney family serves as a poignant reminder of the human cost of untreated mental illness and the necessity of a more proactive approach to mental health care. What began as an ordinary day turned into a nightmare for 16-year-old Leanne Tiernan. Leanne, a well-behaved teenager from Leeds, was loved by her friends and family. She had a happy childhood despite her parents' divorce, living with her mother Sharon Hawkhead and her older sister Michelle. Leanne enjoyed spending time with her friends, attending church, and going shopping, typical activities for a teenager. On Sunday, November 26, 2000, Leanne woke up, had breakfast, and attended church with her family. She later met her friend Sarah for a shopping trip, a routine outing that ended tragically. After parting ways with Sarah around 5 p.m., Leanne took a shortcut through the woods to get home, a decision that would lead to her disappearance. When she failed to return home, her worried mother contacted the police, sparking one of the largest manhunts in West Yorkshire police history. Leanne's body was discovered 9 months later in Linley Woods, 12 miles from her home. The investigation revealed chilling details of her abduction and murder by John Taylor, a postal worker with a history of violent behavior. Taylor's arrest and subsequent trial uncovered his dark past and connections to other unsolved crimes, leaving a community in shock and a family devastated. The case of Leanne Tiernan is a haunting reminder of the hidden dangers that can lurk in everyday life. Leanne Tiernan was born on September 27, 1984, in Leeds, United Kingdom. She grew up in a loving environment despite her parents' divorce. Living with her mother, Sharon Hawkhead, and her older sister Michelle, Leanne was described as a happy and well-cared-for child. She had a close-knit family that supported her in every aspect of her life. Leanne was a regular teenager who enjoyed spending time with her friends, attending church, and shopping. She was known for her good behavior and was well loved by those who knew her. Her interests included hanging out with friends, participating in church activities, and she was always eager to help her family. On the other side, John Taylor, born on August 27, 1956 in Leeds, had a far darker profile. Known in his community as the Pet Man because of his many pets, Taylor was outwardly seen as an ordinary postal worker. However, beneath this facade lay a history of abusive and violent behavior. Taylor was known to frequent the woods near his home, where he poached animals and exhibited cruel behavior towards them. He had been married but divorced in 1996, living alone in a cluttered house. His former partners described him as abusive, recounting incidents of physical assault and control. Taylor's hobbies included hunting and a disturbing interest in bondage, which he had forced upon several women he dated. Leanne's happy life was about to be shattered by a man with a dark past. Taylor's seemingly benign exterior hid his true nature, a predator with a history of violence and sadism. The intersection of their lives on that fateful day would reveal the depths of his depravity and the tragic loss of a bright young life. The contrast between Leanne's innocent joy and Taylor's hidden darkness set the stage for a heart-wrenching and shocking crime that left a community reeling. On Sunday, November 26, 2000, Leanne Tiernan started her day like any other. She woke up, had breakfast with her family, and attended church. After the service, she went to Sunday school before heading back home. Around noon, she called her friend Sarah Whitehouse, and they decided to go Christmas shopping in Leeds City Center. Leanne left her house at 4:30 p.m., wearing her favorite Ales coat, black boots, and carrying her Christmas shopping list. She met Sarah, and together they boarded a bus. The girls spent the afternoon picking out gifts and enjoying each other's company. By 4:45 p.m., they had finished their shopping and boarded a bus to return home. The bus ride was uneventful, and they got off at Sarah's stop around 4:45 p.m. They decided to walk to Sarah's house, arriving around 5 p.m. The two friends chatted for a few minutes before Leanne said goodbye and headed towards her home, opting to take a shortcut through Holy Gill, a familiar wooded path she had used many times before. It was getting dark and the weather was cold, but Leanne felt confident she would be home soon. By 5:30 p.m., Leanne's mother began to worry when she didn't return home. She called Leanne's phone, but there was no answer. At 5:35 p.m., Sarah called Leanne's house to check if she had arrived, but she hadn't. This raised immediate concern. Sharon Hawkhead, Leanne's mother, continued to call her daughter's phone, but the calls went unanswered. At 7 p.m., panic set in, and Sharon contacted the police to report Leanne missing. The police responded quickly, initiating a search operation that included combing the wooded path Leanne was supposed to take. They interviewed neighbors and friends, hoping for any clue that could lead them to the missing teenager. The community rallied together, with hundreds of volunteers joining the search. Police deployed dogs, helicopters, and used thermal imaging in an effort to locate Leanne. Despite their extensive efforts, there was no trace of her. The only lead was a report from a local woman who heard screams near the woods around the time Leanne would have been passing through. Little did they know, this seemingly safe shortcut would lead to a tragic end. As hours turned into days, hope began to wane, and the reality of a possible abduction set in. The search continued with renewed determination, but Leanne remained missing, leaving her family and friends in a state of anguish and fear. The emotional toll on her family was immense. Sharon Hawkhead, Leanne's mother, made numerous public appeals, her voice filled with desperation and sorrow. The community's sense of safety was shattered, and the fear that a predator was in their midst grew stronger. Despite the relentless search, Leanne was still missing, and the uncertainty was unbearable. As days turned into weeks, hope began to fade, but the determination to find Leanne and bring her home never wavered. On August 20th, 2001, 9 months after Leanne Tiernan's disappearance, a man walking his dogs in Linley Woods, North Yorkshire, made a chilling discovery. As his dog sniffed around a shallow hole, he noticed a large, suspicious package wrapped in multiple garbage bags. Alarmed, he immediately contacted the police. Upon arriving at the scene, the police carefully opened the bags and found the body of a young girl. The body was wrapped in 10 green garbage bags, tied with cable ties, and a dog collar was fastened around the neck. Her hands and feet were bound, and she was still wearing the clothes she had on when she disappeared, except for her coat and shoes. The body was remarkably well preserved, suggesting it had been stored in a freezer for most of the time she was missing. Forensic experts quickly confirmed the worst fears. The body was identified as Leanne Tiernan through DNA testing. Initial forensic examinations revealed signs of sexual assault and a slight singeing of her hair, indicating she might have been near a fire. The cause of death was determined to be strangulation with cable ties. The discovery sent shockwaves through Leeds and the surrounding areas. The community that had held out hope for Leanne's safe return was now plunged into grief and fear. The police, already under pressure, now faced the daunting task of finding the person responsible for this heinous crime. The careful manner in which Leanne's body was wrapped and preserved indicated a methodical and calculating killer. The forensic team found dog hairs and red carpet fibers on Leanne's body, which became crucial pieces of evidence. These details painted a grim picture of what Leanne had endured and pointed investigators towards a new line of inquiry. The once vibrant community now grappled with the reality that a cold-blooded killer had been in their midst. The discovery of Leanne's body was not just the end of the search, but the beginning of a complex and heartbreaking investigation. With the discovery of Leanne Tiernan's body, the investigation intensified. Forensic experts worked meticulously to analyze the evidence found at the scene. Dog hairs, red carpet fibers, and traces of other materials were carefully examined. The dog hairs were sent to a specialized lab in the USA, as there was no canine DNA testing available in the UK at that time. These hairs matched those from a dog owned by a local man named John Taylor. John Taylor, a 45-year-old postal worker, lived near the area where Leanne had disappeared. Known as the Pet Man due to his numerous animals, Taylor had a dark past filled with abusive behavior towards both people and animals. His former partners described him as controlling and violent, often using ropes and ties in disturbing ways. He had no prior convictions for major crimes, but his strange behavior had raised suspicions among those who knew him. The police searched Taylor's home, uncovering more incriminating evidence. They found the same type of garbage bags used to wrap Leanne's body, as well as red carpet fibers that matched those found on her clothing. A bundle of yellow cable ties, identical to those used to bind Leanne, was discovered in a drawer next to his bed. Moreover, a freezer in Taylor's backyard contained traces of Leanne's DNA, confirming that her body had been stored there. Taylor was arrested on October 16, 2001. During questioning, he initially denied any involvement, claiming he didn't even own a dog. However, the overwhelming evidence left him with little room to maneuver. He eventually confessed to kidnapping and killing Leanne, but claimed her death was accidental. According to his story, he had grabbed her by the neck with a leash, and when she struggled, he panicked, bound her, and later found her dead. The police didn't believe his version of events. Forensic analysis showed that Leanne had been strangled with cable ties, not accidentally choked. Furthermore, the methodical way her body was wrapped and stored indicated a premeditated act. Taylor's previous behaviors and the evidence found in his home painted a clear picture of a calculated killer. The web of evidence was closing in on Taylor. Investigators linked him to other unsolved crimes in the area, including 2 rapes from the late 1980s. DNA from those cases matched Taylor's, adding to his list of heinous acts. The police worked tirelessly to build a solid case against him, ensuring that he would face justice for his actions. The trial revealed the full extent of Taylor's depravity. He was charged with Leanne's murder, and the court heard harrowing details of his crimes. The forensic evidence, combined with testimonies from former partners and experts, left no doubt about his guilt. Taylor was sentenced to life imprisonment, with a minimum term of 30 years before he could be considered for parole. The community, though relieved that the perpetrator was caught, remained haunted by the tragedy. Leanne's family found some solace in knowing that justice had been served, but the loss of their beloved daughter was a wound that would never fully heal. The investigation into John Taylor's crimes highlighted the dedication of the police and forensic teams, whose relentless pursuit of the truth ensured that a dangerous man was taken off the streets. John Taylor was arrested on October 16, 2001. At first, he denied any involvement in Leanne Tiernan's disappearance, claiming he didn't even own a dog. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Dog hairs, red carpet fibers, and the exact type of garbage bags found at the crime scene were all linked to Taylor. His attempt to deny the facts quickly fell apart under the weight of forensic evidence. Faced with irrefutable proof, Taylor eventually confessed to the crime. He claimed he had seen Leanne walking alone and decided to follow her. He grabbed her with a leash, and when she struggled, he panicked, bound her with cable ties, and took her to his home. Taylor insisted that her death was accidental, saying she hit her head during a struggle and he found her unresponsive. However, forensic analysis showed that Leanne had been strangled with cable ties, not accidentally choked. The trial began on July 8, 2002, at Leeds Crown Court. The prosecution presented a detailed account of Taylor's actions. They highlighted his methodical behavior, pointing out how he had wrapped Leanne's body in multiple garbage bags and stored it in a freezer. Forensic experts testified about the evidence found at Taylor's home, including Leanne's DNA in the freezer and the matching dog hairs and carpet fibers. Taylor's previous abusive behavior towards women also came to light. Former partners testified about his violent tendencies and how he used ropes and ties in disturbing ways. The prosecution argued that Taylor's actions were premeditated and that he had planned to kidnap and kill Leanne. The jury found Taylor guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 30 years before he could be considered for parole. The judge described Taylor as a dangerous sexual sadist who posed a significant threat to society. The community, though relieved by the verdict, was left reeling from the tragedy. Leanne's family found some solace in the fact that justice had been served, but the loss of their beloved daughter was a wound that would never fully heal. Taylor's trial also brought to light his involvement in other unsolved crimes. DNA evidence linked him to 2 rapes in the late 1980s, adding to his list of heinous acts. The police continued to investigate his potential connections to other cold cases, ensuring that he would never harm anyone again. Justice was served, but the scars remained. Leanne Tiernan's case was a stark reminder of the hidden dangers in everyday life and the importance of community vigilance. The tireless efforts of the police and forensic teams ensured that a dangerous predator was taken off the streets, bringing some measure of peace to a grieving family and community. John Taylor's arrest and conviction for the murder of Leanne Tiernan opened the floodgates to uncovering his involvement in other heinous crimes. DNA evidence linked him to 2 unsolved rapes from the late 1980s. In October 1988, a 32-year-old woman was attacked while walking to collect her children from school. In March 1989, another woman was assaulted in her home. Both attacks involved Taylor using a mask and a knife to threaten his victims. The revelation of these crimes prompted police to reopen several cold cases. Taylor was suspected in the murders of Yvonne Fitt in 1992 and Rebecca Hall in 2001, among others. Although no concrete evidence directly linked him to these additional murders, the similarities in the modus operandi and Taylor's violent history made him a prime suspect. The police continued to investigate, hoping to bring closure to the families of other potential victims. Taylor's trial and conviction were a significant step towards justice, but they also highlighted the possibility that he might have been a serial predator long before Leanne's abduction. The ongoing investigations aim to uncover any additional crimes he might have committed and ensure he would never be released to harm anyone again. Currently, John Taylor is serving his life sentence at Wakefield Prison in West Yorkshire. His minimum term was set at 30 years, but the judge recommended against parole, given the severity of his crimes and the danger he posed to society. Taylor's imprisonment brought some measure of relief to the community, knowing that a dangerous predator was off the streets. The impact of Taylor's crimes on the community and Leanne's family was profound. While justice was served, the emotional scars remained. The case of Leanne Tiernan serves as a somber reminder of the hidden threats that can lurk in seemingly safe environments. It underscores the importance of vigilance, community support, and the relentless pursuit of justice by law enforcement agencies. Taylor's story is a chilling reminder of how one individual's actions can ripple through a community, leaving lasting pain and a call for justice. The efforts of the police, forensic teams, and the community ensured that Leanne's story was not forgotten, and her legacy continues to inspire a commitment to uncovering the truth and protecting the innocent. The case of Leanne Tiernan is a heartbreaking reminder of the hidden dangers in our world. A bright young girl with a loving family, her life was tragically cut short by a man with a dark and violent past. John Taylor's actions shattered a community and left a family in eternal grief. Yet, through the tireless efforts of the police and forensic teams, justice was served. Taylor's arrest and conviction ensured that he would never harm another innocent life. Leanne Tiernan's story will not be forgotten. It serves as a beacon, reminding us to cherish our loved ones and remain vigilant against those who may seek to harm them. The legacy of Leanne's life and the community's response to her tragic death continue to inspire a commitment to justice and safety. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe and share your thoughts. By spreading awareness, we can help prevent such tragedies and honor the memory of those we have lost. Thank you for watching and stay safe. Austin, Texas is known for its lively music scene and friendly community. But in December 2014, a series of terrible crimes shocked the city. On December 6, 2014, Kathy Blair, a well-loved choir director, was found dead in her home. 9 days later, on December 15, 2014, Sydney and Billy Shelton, an elderly couple, were found murdered in their home. These violent events left everyone wondering, what connects these seemingly unrelated victims? Kathy Blair was a 53-year-old music teacher. She moved to Austin to follow her passion for music. Kathy directed the Christian Choral Society, inspiring many with her talent and kindness. Her death was a shock to her family, friends, and students. Sydney Shelton, 85, and his wife, Billy, 83, had been married for 64 years. They were known for their hard work, kindness, and love for their family. Their sudden deaths left the community in mourning. These murders were brutal and seemed to be connected. Both homes showed signs of break-ins, and valuable items were missing. The similarities between the cases suggested a link, but the police had no clear suspects or evidence. The peaceful neighborhoods of Austin were now scenes of fear and grief. The police faced the challenge of solving these murders and bringing justice to the victims. As the investigation unfolded, a surprising lead would eventually help solve the case. What could have driven someone to commit such horrific acts? And how were these victims chosen? This is the story of a community shaken by violence and the search for the truth behind these tragic events. Kathy Blair was born on May 31, 1961, in Burbank, California. From a young age, she had a deep love for music. She moved to Austin to pursue her passion and earned a master's degree in vocal performance from the University of Texas. Kathy dedicated her life to teaching music and became the director of the Christian Choral Society in Austin. For over 2 decades, she inspired her students with her talent and kindness. Kathy was not just a teacher, she was a mentor and a friend to many. Her students looked up to her and cherished the guidance she provided. She had a way of making everyone feel special and believed in their potential. Kathy's dedication extended beyond the classroom. She often organized community events and performances, bringing people together through the power of music. Her personal life, however, was not without challenges. Kathy was twice divorced and worked hard to support her family. Despite these difficulties, she remained a loving and devoted mother to her children. Her tragic death on December 6, 2014, left a void in the lives of those who knew her. The community mourned the loss of a beloved figure who had touched so many lives with her music and compassion. Sydney Shelton was born on September 12, 1929, and his wife Billy was born on March 4, 1931. They were married for 64 years and had a life filled with love and dedication. Sydney and Billy were known for their kindness and generosity. They had 3 children and several grandchildren, and their home was always open to family and friends. Sydney worked as a carpenter, and Billy was a homemaker. Together, they built a life centered around family and community. They were active members of their church and participated in various local events. The Sheltons were loved by their neighbors, who often described them as the heart of the community. On December 15, 2014, their lives were tragically cut short. The news of their brutal murder shocked everyone who knew them. Sydney and Billy were found beaten and strangled in their home, a place where they should have been safe. The community struggled to comprehend the loss of such kind and gentle people. Their deaths left a deep impact on the neighborhood. Friends and family remembered the Sheltons for their unwavering love and support. They were a couple who exemplified what it meant to be devoted to each other and their community. The tragedy of their passing was felt by all who had the privilege of knowing Sydney and Billy Shelton. On December 6, 2014, Kathy Blair's son, Joe Hargis, returned home to a horrifying scene. Kathy was found in her bedroom, lying in a pool of blood. She had been strangled, stabbed multiple times, and her neck was slashed. The violent attack showed signs of a struggle. The police arrived quickly and began their investigation. They found Kathy's jewelry box on the floor with its contents scattered. Drawers had been opened and emptied, suggesting a robbery. Blood was found on the light switch and drawers, indicating the attacker moved around after the killing. Despite the chaotic scene, there were no clear fingerprints or DNA evidence left behind. The meticulous nature of the crime suggested it was carefully planned to avoid leaving traces. Investigators faced a challenging case with few immediate clues. Kathy's murder left her family, friends, and the community in shock and fear. On December 15, 2014, Nurse Dow Kochela arrived at the home of Sydney and Billy Shelton for a routine visit. She found the front door broken and entered cautiously. Inside, she discovered the elderly couple in their bedroom, both beaten and strangled. Billy had also been stabbed in the face multiple times. The crime scene was eerily similar to Kathy Blair's. The Sheltons' jewelry boxes were emptied, and drawers were pulled out and stacked neatly. This suggested that the same person might be responsible for both attacks. The brutality and methodical nature of the crime shocked the investigators. Like Kathy's case, there were no immediate suspects or clear evidence. The similarities between the two scenes led the police to believe they were dealing with a serial killer. The community was now in a state of panic, fearing for their safety and desperate for answers. Tim Parlin became a key suspect in the investigation. Born on January 5, 1964, Tim had a long history of criminal activity, particularly involving theft and burglary. He had spent several years in prison for stealing jewelry and other valuables. Despite his criminal background, Tim managed to find work as a handyman, offering his services to various households in Austin. Tim's connection to Kathy Blair came to light during the investigation. In the spring of 2014, Kathy had hired Tim to perform some yard work at her home. Neighbors described him as a solitary and unfriendly man, which made his presence noticeable. Kathy mentioned to a friend that she found Tim creepy, but she still allowed him to work on her property. This connection drew the attention of the police, who began to dig deeper into Tim's background and activities. On December 6, 2014, the day of Kathy's murder, Tim's whereabouts were initially unclear. However, further investigation revealed that Tim had pawned a piece of jewelry that belonged to Kathy on the same day she was killed. This discovery made him a prime suspect. The police needed to gather more evidence to build a solid case against him. Sean Gant Benalcazar, born on February 14, 1984, was an unexpected addition to the list of suspects. Sean had no prior criminal record and was a high school science teacher with a degree in microbiology. He lived in Galveston, Texas, and had a reputation as a responsible and law-abiding citizen. His connection to Tim Parlin, however, would place him under intense scrutiny. Sean's sister started dating Tim Parlin's nephew, which led to Sean meeting Tim a few months before the murders. Despite their different backgrounds, the two men formed an unlikely acquaintance. On December 6, 2014, Sean was in Austin visiting his sister and stayed with Tim during this time. This placed him in the vicinity of Kathy Blair's murder. When the police questioned Tim Parlin about his involvement in the murders, Tim pointed to Sean as the person who had actually committed the crime. Tim claimed that Sean had gone into Kathy's house while Tim waited outside. The police then turned their attention to Sean, whose clean record and respectable job made the accusations against him seem improbable. Nonetheless, the investigators had to follow this lead to uncover the truth. The investigation began to gather momentum as critical pieces of evidence emerged. The first significant clue was the pawnshop receipt found in Tim Parlin's possession. Dated December 6, 2014, it showed that Tim had pawned a pendant belonging to Kathy Blair on the day she was murdered. This receipt linked Tim directly to the crime. Another crucial piece of evidence was the thermal footage provided by Kathy's neighbor, Rob Leaf. The footage, recorded on the night of Kathy's murder, showed a car pulling up near her house and a person walking towards it. Although the footage did not reveal the person's identity or the car's license plate, it provided a starting point for the investigation. The car was identified as a green Toyota Camry, which matched the vehicle Tim was known to use. Additional evidence included bloodstains found in Tim Parlin's car. Forensic analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Kathy Blair, further implicating Tim in the crime. These pieces of evidence began to form a clearer picture of the events surrounding Kathy's murder. Tim Parlin's trial began on March 1, 2018. The prosecution presented a strong case against him, focusing on the evidence gathered during the investigation. One of the key pieces of evidence was the pawnshop receipt. This receipt showed that Tim had pawned Kathy Blair's pendant on December 6, 2014, the day she was murdered. This directly linked him to the crime. The prosecution also presented the thermal footage recorded by Rob Leaf. The footage showed a car, matching Tim's green Toyota Camry, near Kathy's house on the night of the murder. While the footage did not show Tim's face, it provided a crucial connection between him and the crime scene. Forensic evidence was another critical part of the prosecution's case. Bloodstains found in Tim's car were confirmed to belong to Kathy Blair. This further implicated Tim in the murder. The prosecution argued that Tim had a history of stealing jewelry and that he targeted Kathy Blair for her valuables. Throughout the trial, Tim maintained his innocence, claiming that he was being framed. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming. On March 20, 2018, the jury found Tim Parlin guilty of capital murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial of Sean Gant Benalcazar started on November 1, 2018. The prosecution focused on Sean's confession and his connection to Tim Parlin. They presented evidence showing that Sean was in Austin on December 6, 2014, the night Kathy Blair was murdered. One of the key moments in the trial was the presentation of Sean's partial confession. During his interrogation, Sean admitted to entering Kathy's house and being present during the struggle that led to her death. The prosecution argued that Sean's confession, combined with the forensic evidence, proved his guilt. The prosecution also presented the thermal footage and shoe print evidence. Sean's gait and shoe prints matched those seen in the footage near Kathy's house. This placed him at the crime scene and contradicted his earlier claims of staying in the car. The defense argued that Sean was coerced into confessing and that Tim Parlin was the real mastermind behind the murders. They claimed that Sean was a victim of manipulation and that his confession was made under duress. However, the jury found the evidence against Sean convincing. On November 20, 2018, the jury found Sean Gant Benalcazar guilty of Kathy Blair's murder. He was also sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought some closure to Kathy's family and friends, who had been seeking justice for her brutal death. The verdicts in the trials of Tim Parlin and Sean Gant Benalcazar had a profound impact on the community and the victims' families. Kathy Blair's family expressed relief that justice had been served. They remembered Kathy as a loving mother and an inspiring teacher who touched many lives with her music. Sydney and Billy Shelton's family also found some comfort in the verdicts. They spoke about the couple's kindness and the deep loss they felt. The community, which had been living in fear since the murders, began to feel a sense of safety and closure. Public reactions were mixed. Many were shocked that someone like Sean Gant Benalcazar, a high school science teacher with no prior criminal record, could be involved in such brutal crimes. Others focused on the importance of thorough police work and the role of evidence in solving the case. Community members organized memorials and events to honor the victims. These gatherings helped the community heal and remember the lives of Kathy Blair, Sydney Shelton, and Billy Shelton. The impact of their deaths would not be forgotten, but the verdicts provided a sense of justice and a step towards healing for everyone affected by the tragedy. The trials of Tim Parlin and Sean Gant Benalcazar brought justice for the brutal murders of Kathy Blair and the Shelton couple. On March 20, 2018, Tim Parlin was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His history of theft, connection to the crime scenes, and possession of Kathy Blair's stolen jewelry were crucial in securing his conviction. On November 20, 2018, Sean Gant Benalcazar was also found guilty of Kathy Blair's murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. His partial confession, presence at the crime scene, and forensic evidence tied him directly to the murder. The jury rejected the defense's claim that he was coerced into confessing. These verdicts were significant for the victims' families and the community. Justice was served, bringing a sense of closure to those affected by these horrific crimes. The diligent work of the police and prosecutors ensured that the perpetrators were held accountable, highlighting the importance of thorough investigations and the power of evidence. The murders of Kathy Blair, Sidney Shelton, and Billy Shelton left a lasting impact on the Austin community. The trials and convictions of their killers brought some measure of peace, but the memories of the victims continue to resonate deeply. Kathy Blair's legacy as a dedicated music teacher and loving mother lives on through her students and the community events she inspired. The Shelton couple, known for their kindness and devotion to family, are remembered fondly by neighbors and loved ones. Their tragic deaths remind us of the importance of community and the need to look out for one another. These cases also underscore the need for vigilance and the critical role of community members in solving crimes. The thermal footage provided by Rob Leaf was a turning point in the investigation, demonstrating how even small actions can have a significant impact. The community has come together to honor the victims and support their families. Memorials and events celebrate the lives of Kathy Blair, Sidney Shelton, and Billy Shelton, ensuring they are not forgotten. While the pain of their loss remains, the strength and resilience of the community serve as a testament to their enduring influence. Justice has been served, but the journey towards healing continues.